It's like a dream. And I was supposed to talk about, because Anna and Salome asked me for a title, and also for subtitle. So it's really difficult. When we are trying to make a book, or the title comes, or it just comes in the end. And in a very, very, very suffering process. But this one, no, it was easy. It was easy. Brazilian illustration. So I'm supposed to talk about my partners, which is really great. Because when I have to talk about myself, it's really, I get shy and I get timid and I stop talking. Diversity, himself and herself. This is an illustrator from Argentina. How, I could be killed for that. How can, if there's Argentina and Brazil are always talking about football, soccer. I'm not a very good fan of football, soccer, but everybody else is, but me. So I'm never going to say that I don't have a team. I have, and I change sometimes, depending on the faces of the people, on the others, because I'm reading the other. And Caribe is, I would say, I know Chris Myers goes frequently to Bahia, and Bahia is his second home place in the world, and it's in the edge, not in the center. And Bahia is the most Afro place outside Africa. I think it's even the second one in numbers of Afro descendants of Brazilians. And it's a very strong culture. It's a very strong voice. And Caribe got impassioned with this place. It happened to many people who don't live in Bahia, that they fall in love with Bahia, and somehow they turn into Baianos. Baiano is the person who is brought up in Bahia, and no problem, you can turn into a Baiano if you want, into a Baiana. And Caribe is the most Baiano of all illustrators, and the most Baiano, of course, of all Argentinians. And he was making some, how do I say, annotations. Junko, if I say something wrong, please correct me. He makes some annotations, visual annotations. For me, images and words are the same thing, and I can prove it. So, he makes some visual annotations, and he writes images. You can see this there. It's very mixed in a cartographic way. And he illustrated a book from Jorge Amado called The Gato Malhado e a Andorinha Sinhá. The Spotted Cat. How do I say Andorinha? The golondrina. It's a small bird, black, white here, flies over the roof. Jackdaw. Okay, jackdaw. And of course, he gets in love with her, and people won't allow this to be true. They want to marry, they want to make a baby, but people don't allow. And so he gives himself to the snake. And of course, he's going to die in the next illustration. Are there separated themes for children? Isn't life coming without future to everybody, including children? This is a wonderful story from Jorge Amado, maybe the one I like best from Jorge Amado. And when I was a young boy, I read this book through also the illustrations of Caribe. And it was so nice, because not in this picture, but the cat shows his sex. And I thought it was forbidden in books for children. Now, of course, it should not be. And of course, giving himself to the death through this snake is possible too. Because he won't marry somebody from a different species. Okay, so This is also Caribe. A collective plural of butterflies is in Brazil is pana-pana. So pana-pana is a collective of birds. I love this illustration because you can see what's obvious. I'm not going to describe it, please. The name of Caribe is written there. And these butterflies, they are very beautiful. And they come in the river because they want to feed on the pee of people. Pee? When you urinate? Yes, pee. So it's so poetic, it's so wonderful, and it's so organical. This is Nehemiah. I was brought in Brasilia, as strange as it can be. I was born in a parent city that now has turned into something else. But I showed first Caribe and then Nehemiah. This generation in Brazil, they used to draw with their pens. Amazing. Not with the computer, pens. Always holding a pen. And the idea of, there is a word in Portuguese which means rabiscar, is to make a sketch. How do I say it? To sketch. And this generation thinks with a line. Nehemiah is a thinker. He's so interested in politics, in philosophy. And you can see that he's making his dream, his fantasy, real through the trace. To think with the trace is to draw. And then you have the same drawing made as how do I say, a museum in Rio de Janeiro. Atos Vulcão was one of the thinkers of Brasilia. Brasilia was a city made by thinkers, visual thinkers, but also educators. So thinkers in all levels. And it was supposed to be a utopia. And each utopia tends to turn into dystopia. Because when you create things for the other, sometimes, like the book, you forget the other. I think it's even better to do for yourself, or for somebody you know very well. And then to bring the mystery, to divide this mystery with the other. But not try to predict the other. It's a way to lose the other. But they did their best to make this city. And it was really a project of giving free access to education, arts, thinking, sports, to everybody. In each block. And they were trying to make this thinking turn into reality. But as soon as they did Brasilia, the military regime took the country and the city turned into a citadel. Many of them were persecuted, some were killed, some were disappeared. People would disappear just because they have forbidden books, and so on. This is the idea of Atos Vulcão as a single piece that multiplies and creates a mural. Mural? Yes. Yes. As crazy as he can get, with a single piece for the plural. This is the illustration of Daniel Bueno, illustrator from Brazil. I tried to pick randomly some illustrators that I know that I admire. I see many dialogues in this composition with Atos Vulcão. And Daniel Kondo is now showing the other side of his illustration in a very interesting composition. Mariana Massarani is my friend and my partner, and she illustrated the cover and all the illustrations of my new book that is about Inês de Castro. She was a queen from Portugal, and she was crowned after she was dead. And she was dead by the father of her husband. So the story is told by the children, one of their children, called Beatriz. And Mariana does the line in the cover, and this line is the line of people that are going to kiss the hand of the dead queen. It's a very, how do I say, morbid story, but children love it. And I don't know, because maybe it's very human. And it was funny because Mariana gave this book to a friend, and this friend wanted to give a book to a child she knew, and she went to the bookshop and she asked, "Do you have Inês?" And the guy said, "I have, but it's very scary." But yes, Mariana's drawing, another illustration of Mariana, you can see very different styles. We're talking about diversity, but talking about unity. Mariana, she has, I asked her to illustrate that book because she can be a poet of the funny side of things, of traces. And in Inês, she didn't hide any aspect of the cruelty, of the morbidness of the book. She even made it more cruel, with separated hearts, bleeding, swords, and so on. This is another composition from Mariana. Ziraldo. Mariana has got some influence from Ziraldo, everybody has got. I worked with Ziraldo, and he is a mega star of illustration in Brazil. Everybody knows him. And he's a very good teacher as well. Ziraldo, which is from the older generation, has got influence from Nassara, a very interesting illustrator from Brazil, from the beginning of the 20th century, and he was always doing things in a dialogue with music, which is something very strong from Brazil. And then an old illustrator called Poti. He's very interesting too, and this illustration is a little bit more representational. And then you can see some other illustrators like Nelson Cruz that have a more representational kind of illustration, but very interesting. This illustrator is Ale Abreu. I think it's nice because there's this urban side also of Brazil, not only the regional, but in this poetic possibility of two moons in a dialogue with the infinite, how do I say, net of lights in the favela. This is Nelson Cruz. Lúcio Costa was the one responsible to draw the drawing of Brasilia, the urban plan of Brasilia, which looks like a plane. And we can see his thought as a progress. And I love this, to see how the idea is turning to something else in a very schematic way. Many illustrators are architects. And one illustrator that loves this idea of urban plan and architecture is the architect Andrés Sandoval. Andrés Sandoval is from Chile, but he lives in Brazil. So he's like Caribe. He's the most Paulista, because he lives in São Paulo, he's the most Paulista Chilean ever. So even the idea of belonging to some place is sometimes nothing. You are better representing if you don't belong to this place. So it's a kind of being in between. This is also Andrés coming from this urban context to a very organic natural way, but there's a very interesting dialogue between them two. In this duotonic, working with only two colors, he's very good on this. And of course, he loves Cissa Fittipaldi. She's our Brazilian candidate for the Hans Christian Andersen now. She's a wonderful illustrator, and she has been living with many not Indians, specific nations all over the country. This illustration was made based on the work she did with the Nambiquaras. So they are different. They are different voices, not Indian as something general. There is no such a thing. And she's a person who knows how to give the importance to difference in this case. Because without difference, we are just the same. And she influenced a lot Geraldo Valério, a very good illustrator too, that works with cutout to make his work very interesting. It's the creation of the world, and he displays the human and animals and nature as something that is not separated from each other. I think it's very interesting the way he does this. So you have another point of view by Marilda Castanha, which is the wife of Nelson Cruz over there. Graça Lima, also my partner. This is also Graça Lima. This is a story told by Rogério Andrade Barbosa. A story called Dula, the Cannibal Woman. It's also a terrifying story that Graça brings to a very interesting, with the rhythm of the illustration, she turns the story even stronger. This is Poti, the same person there, who I showed the illustration. This is Poti, and he illustrated lots of great writers in Brazil. This is his illustration for João Guimarães Rosa, the Great Sertão Veredas. Grande Sertão Veredas. Difficult to translate. There is a dialogue of this kind of illustration from the 50s with the work of art of Fernando Vilela. This book is called Lampião and Lancelotti, and it's very interesting. This is also from Caribé. I bring back Caribé here to show Pedro Rafael. He's really connected to Caribé, but he does his own language, showing the culture of Bahia in a very interesting way, I think. This is Helena Alexandrino. She used to be a wonderful illustrator, but since a long time she hasn't illustrated anymore. Marcelo Cides, very interesting artist that he finds no boundaries among the arts. This is the book he made with the heroes. It's a book. And this is Jaca, very interesting illustrator that has this dialogue with the outstanding new waves of illustration all over the world. So this is what I can tell about the others. How many time do we have?
About
20 minutes, it's a lot of time.
Okay.
And I showed a little bit of these, like Marcelo Cides, some of the illustrators or writers in Brazil. They are concerned about making the book as also the graphic design as a character. I think of the graphic design as a character. It's a book about the life of a young charcoal burner. And sometime in the book, it's okay. Oh, thank you so much. It's good to be wonderful with you. And the boy meets another boy, albino, how do I say it? Albino. And Brazil has one of the largest population of albinos in the world. And I would like that one would take part in the story. And he cannot disguise himself, because although he covers his body with charcoal, he always he lights in the light. And he has a cigarette. And the other boy tries to take the cigarette from him, and the cigarette flies away, and then it catches fire. So the pages turn into silent, and the idea of the fire becomes real. It's written, fire. I won't talk about the fire. The fire is really grown up. He should speak about himself. So it's really what happens. And yes, that is part of the project. Let me thank you. There's another one afterwards. Those are images of the book. This is heavy, so it takes a long time. It was nice because it was difficult, because I wanted this book not to be a book about a social problem in Brazil, which is a social problem. Because in Brazil, one of the first projects of exportation is pig iron. And to make pig iron, each moment of the chain of this production should be not allowed. They take a big chain in a big field, and they push the trees, usually from Brazilian savanna, cerrado, and each and every thing that is inside this chain turns into nothing, turns into charcoal. And Brazilian savanna is the most diverse savanna in the world. They don't want to know about it. They just bring it down. They construct this round oven made of clay, and they put all the charcoal inside it and burn it. And it's better, they say, that to close this burning clay the hand of a boy. It's better. It's more efficient. It's not allowed, but they do. So what?
Explain this again.
Huh?
Didn't understand. Can you explain it again?
They make this a person who is the one who makes the oven starts making the oven all over his body, the oven. When he finishes, there is a opening where they throw the charcoal. And while the charcoal is burning, you have to close with the clay, with your hand, this oven. And they say it's better than the hand of a boy. A child, a small hand. A small hand. Yes, it can be of a girl, of course. And the narrator of this story, the solution for me was to make the hornet the narrator. Because he doesn't understand anything in this situation. He makes himself a clay house upside down. They put their egg inside it, and they bring a small worm. They put their venom inside this worm, and it starts to be killed slowly. So he says, I'm not a good guy, I'm really bad. I'm really evil. And he does that so that the egg is going to turn into his boy and he's going to eat the one. While he's doing this, he's watching the boy. They're trying to escape from the people, from the police, and going to the factory where the charcoal is used to burn the big iron. Yes? So this is a book, unfinished one, about Amazon. And this is a boy that he has 7 brothers and he's being missing because he stepped a stingray. And he got a fever and he got hallucination. And then this monkey called Wakari removes the sting, and after some hours he comes to himself. So we don't know what's hallucination, we don't know what's fiction. This is Meninos do Mangue, Mangrove Boys. It's a book about people that has a living on catching crabs for a living. And mangroves are supposed to be the cleanest places on earth. It's the place where fishes reproduce themselves, the sea life, sharks, shrimps, but they get like this because in Brazil they are in the middle of some cities all over the coast. And this is a book made with, I first made the story. We were making a documentary and me and Graça were invited to be the art directors. And as soon as we were being there in this place, the filmmaker said, "You're going to do a book about it." Yeah, I said, "Yes, I'm just doing it." And first I wrote the 7 stories, 8 stories, and then I made illustrations. And I did illustration with the trash, with the garbage, the plastic bags. So there's always, this is the tide, and some crabs, same. This is another book made by the wife of Jorge Amado, and this is a sex relation. Can you see? Can you see? Yes. No, the fish and yes, the fish and the man.
It's a sexual relationship between those two.
It's the birth of the siren, mermaid. So she says, we don't know what happened. He took her to the ground, to the hall, to the waters, deep waters. Actually, the fish did because he saved her. And she says, we don't know what happened, but the mermaid appeared. And I decided to make real sex in this illustration. Because she puts the eggs and he makes, yes. But nobody notices it. Nobody said, yes. It's the same book. This is Gardens. It's a book about gardens. And it was made, the poems, I read the poems of Rosiana Muhai, and I asked if I could do the syntaxes. I could arrange the book in my crazy way, and she said, do whatever you want. And there are pages with no text, and there are pages with only text, and those are the trees of Brazil. People say, but nobody's going to learn to know that these are the trees from Brazil. Okay, but I know. And if somebody notices, okay, this is from India. So, it's not written anywhere. This was an illustration for the book about peace in Nami. Teresa, cavalhadas. How many time do you have? You can't be too careful. João, 5 to 10
minutes.
Okay, so let's go. Oh, I would like just to show this book, because this is a book about the war in Iraq or Iraq. And I was trying to make a book. There is a boy, Zubair is the boy, And he finds, it's 2003, and the city is being bombarded, the city of Baghdad, and they are looting the museum and the library, one of the most important museums in the world of Baghdad. And this boy is running, and then he finds an object. Because the guy who takes care of the museum cannot take care of each object that is being stolen. And Zubair fights that if he is an Iraqi, he has the right to have something. And the book that he finds a tapestry, a rug, and the rug opens this size, and inside there is a book. And both the two warriors from the coalition and the one from how do I say, the local one began to purchase him, to chase him, and he finds himself comfortable in the labyrinth, in the maze of the souk, and there he was lost many times in this place until he finds this is the right place to hide. And then this part of the book tells about labyrinths and tells about Iraq from Mesopotamia 2,000 years before, with many more images and women. And Gaudinana is the last princess who has. She is also how do I say? Sacerdotisa. Priest in this culture, and he's going to find. Yes, the idea is to come in the Eastern way and Eastern way as a dialogue and as a meeting of two narratives. Yes. So, that's all. Maybe you can ask something instead.
Questions? You got 5 minutes. Questions? Author, you want to ask something?
No, I just want to...
Microphone?
I have a question.
Yes.
I don't need a microphone. How do you see the position of Brazilian illustrations towards the world? Because that was a topic that we had already for the last days. Because as I see it, sometimes you have different styles of illustrations for different parts of the world, and some of the illustrations don't leave their region where they are created, and some of them have something that transports something also to other parts of the world. How do you see that?
About the different styles of the illustrators?
No, about how the Brazilian illustration can be goes out to the world, and what's happening there. I mean, you are a Brazilian illustrator who is all over the world, but not all of them of the illustrators that you show us are known outside Brazil.
Some of them are. For example, André Sandoval, Daniel Kondo. There was an exhibition in Germany, a new illustration, Brazilian new illustration. It was very interesting. I don't know who are the others. There's one illustration, Renato Morricone. I didn't include him, but he's very good. And he's been translated in many parts of the world. But I think maybe because Brazilian market used to be very good, big. Illustrators when a book, Brazilian government was the biggest buyer ever. And they bought thousands and thousands of books, and so many illustrators and many writers could make a living on it, and they wouldn't worry if they have to make this book suitable for the world, which was the theme of what we were talking about, because yes, is there such a thing? And how much of you are going to be lost if you try to make something universal? And what is universal? Universal is the idea that we made by Europe, Central Europe, the States. We know that States publish less than 2%. I think UK even less. Some countries are known for not buying anything else. They don't want to even see. But I think if you don't have to mind, I told not, yes, I don't know if I'm answering your question, Hendrik, but I think it's very good, it's very good. But if somebody is doing the book to be sold or to be understood in some other country, it's even worse than trying to do the book for some age of children as a massive thing, strapped, you know?
You said something very interesting in the beginning, because you said we are not...
Gets better when it's turned to human. But even human is not something... If we weren't changing, we wouldn't have turned into people. So if we are from now on something equal or universal, we won't change anymore. And it's funny because in China, people don't think that sometimes these books are too exotical. And if I said I was talking to many of my books are published in the great majority in China, and people say why, and it's very easy for me to know, because they are not so influenced by this equality, because it's not a natural idea, it's imposed. And I said, okay, I know that in some places in China, people use birds. They have the bird as a friend, the cormorant. The cormorant, they put a tail on his neck, and he catches the fish, and the fisherman takes part of the fish for him, and the other part for the bird. This is very specific, but I know. And I know children that know that, and they live in Brazil. If I didn't know this, I think I wouldn't be myself. You understand?
I'm interested what's the cultural basic that average Brazilian illustrator or artist is feeling. I mean, cultural basic during the centuries. Is that Indian past somehow? Because you were talking about this brutal thing in the beginning of the lecture.
The Namiquaras?
I'm not sure. Just generally the dying men and this like
dying men with birds.
Maybe
from
yes.
Cecil Fittipaldi.
I'm about the idea more. So is that somehow the idea that comes from this? Maybe I'm mistaken, from Aztec or someone like Indian culture, for example.
No, Aztec is from...
Yeah, but somehow it's for Europeans like us, it seems that somehow maybe you're feeding yourself with that past somehow.
With the past.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very funny because in Brazil, people don't think that much of the past. Because we don't have huge pyramids like Peru has. The oldest city is Caraguatatuba today. Mexico has. Brazil has got none, or they are hidden, or they were more, how I would say, they were more socialist communities, in a way that if you see the idea of pyramid, it's really related to the idea of power through the others and slaving or applying to work for this. I saw a guy talking about Egypt. He said they were not slaves. They were doing this because they knew that he was his God and he was alive. And they did because he was his God. And everybody does everything for his God. So people say that in Brazil, what is archaeology is the land. The black land was created by old civilizations. And I think it's really true, because you can see the places where you got this interference. Not to say that these populations were peaceful, they weren't. They would kill the other for nothing. But they were really complex. And we cannot say the word Indians as a general word, because they were different nations. And they speak languages as different as Hindi is different from Italian.
Yeah, I think it's understandable for us, because most Europeans think that, but I just wanted to express the idea somehow, like the neutral part of the idea of
there is a very good TV show, woman, that she has a TV show about plants. And she was talking that when you look into a forest, think of a forest here or a rainforest in Brazil. If you don't know the name of the plants, you see, it's like when you see without the glasses. As soon as you begin to learn, this is embaúba, this is sumaúma, you see, the glass comes in, you see more, you see through the word. This is why, again, I say that words and images are the same. Really the same. And yes, as soon as you get into something, you know more, you want to know more. And it's about difference. You go into the difference. The difference makes you free, more free. Not totally free, but because freedom is a construction. And if you go through the difference, you get free, more free. Because freedom is not natural. Not reading as well, not reading.
Roger, I wanted to ask you, many of the illustrations you showed us would be perceived by me as some sort of, having a very formal aesthetics, having some, composed of some abstract forms based on some probably very archaic primary forms, which are maybe not archaic, but resemble those. And I would regard this, if I saw this in a Georgian bookshop, as some sort of artistic experiment, and I would say, wow, what an interesting book. But I wonder, how do Brazilian readers perceive it? Is that for them? Because I imagine if you saw something based on like very traditional Georgian primary forms, for me this is like, these forms would be familiar. For you, they might seem experimental or exotic or whatsoever. So I just want to ask you, these books you showed us, how would they be perceived by Brazilian readers?
Yes, we have good surprises. they usually interact in a very interesting way. Of course, some children more in some style, some children more in the other. I didn't, for example, there's a book that I made with, this is the, but this was made with photographs. And some children interact with this book. This is another thing. And
I'm not asking about children, I'm asking about parents.
About parents. Yes, because we have so few readers in the country that the few readers, I think they are very open. They are open. We have some readers, crazy readers that read mainly Paulo Coelho or helpful literature. I think there are many reading mediators in Brazil, very good ones, that go all over the country and they bring another point of view to the teachers and to the parents as well. It's funny because Brazil was a country that never was stimulated to read. Portuguese people never allowed the Brazilian people to do a publishing house until the 19th century, when Dom João came to Brazil, escaping from Napoleon, which was very clever, something that they say he was very, how do I say, not courageous. He was afraid. He was a silly, yes, like a coward. But it was very clever, and he brought his library to Brazil. Now it's one of the 7 libraries most important in the world in Rio de Janeiro. The library of the king that is stood there, the father begins to read because of this. Because before he thought this was not something meant for him. So this is why we have some experimental or crazy things or some things like this. And publishers don't say too much, okay, it's not gonna sell. There's not such a thing in Brazil. Still now they're beginning to get more commercial in the way to say, well, we have to see, we have to... Before they would do poetry in Brazil for children a lot, experimental things for children a lot. If it's okay, if it goes well, okay. If it doesn't go as well, stop doing, or some publishing house would keep doing it because it's their profile. Please.
2 questions. One is, given that there was such a long period. Given that there was such a long period of the military dictatorship, has that changed illustration? Because I feel like maybe people want to say things more with pictures than saying it outright. And then the other question is, and has that made the role, I think of an illustrator like, what's the guy, Leo Nielsen? He did for newspapers, Leo Nielsen, I don't know what's his name. Leo Nielsen. So what is the place of an illustrator like that, I feel like he speaks to so much of society, like it's a bigger place than it would be in a place that did not have like a dictatorship. So how has that affected the images that you make?
Yes, very good question, because when I was growing, in my house we read a lot, but in some places some books were missing because of this idea. So we learned that book was a powerful object because of this, because my aunt was throwing books. She would put, how do I say, to grab a rock, a stone, so that the book would go in the ground or in the deep. Otherwise it would float and people would see, police would see, and she could get arrested by trying to hide somebody else's books. She, that was a reader, a crazy reader, so she was suffering to do this, even if it was the book of the other. But we were grown up, and a whole generation And it was funny because although the books were suppressed, the illustrations or these murals or the architecture or these layouts, it was funny because their thoughts were in this abstraction as well. So we turned into readers, image readers, really image readers. And all of these image readers were readers. So of course, there's no such a thing. If somebody's an illustrator, he loves reading because it's the same again. But the other question is about Leo Nilsson. Leo Nilsson was a powerful artist. I could have shown him here too. He was yes. There's no boundaries, of course. If I say images and words are the same, can you imagine graphic arts, painting, and so on? It's all the same. You showed it. It's all the same. I remember he has a pillow.
I mean, my embroideries are from Leo Nilsson. That's why.
No, it's yours.
No, but that's why I started to do it.
Yes, it's beautiful because in this pillow it's written nobody. And I think it's the image of loneliness, of being left alone in the world. Nobody. I saw this image. Yeah, he's very powerful, and his drawings are amazing. Yes, we have to move to the other avenue.
Yes, I'm afraid so. I'm afraid that many things I really would like to continue asking. But nevertheless, we have a very, very interesting exhibition at the Goethe Institute. These are photographs made by the Swiss photographer Hans, who has traveled through the Caucasus and through Ukraine and made a series of photographs. He also made a photo book. We wanted to present it at our festival, but you know, the bureaucracy in Western Europe is really terrible. They wouldn't let him through the customs from Switzerland to Germany, which we as a free country can hardly understand, but nevertheless this happened. So the book is not here, but the images are there. And so those who wish could move with us to the Goethe Institute now. And in the evening, I think Nusa knows, we have found a nice place where we could all meet in the evening and maybe have some wine and or beer, if you prefer, and something to eat.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Thank you.
I would like to thank the audience very much, and